Flyers looking for a fifth straight win tonight, and this time they hit the road. 3-0 homestand, 4 straight wins since the All-Star break. But tonight it's off to Toronto for a battle with the Maple Leafs. Jason Martinez, Brian Smith here initially. Chris Terrian will join us momentarily. And Smitty, looking to keep it going. They figured out how to win at home. They've known how to win on the road. They're going to tap back into that in this game.
Yeah, it's been a strange year in that regard, has it not? Usually you're about – you try to be about 700, 750 at home, and you consider 500 on the road to be a good season. Right now, the Flyers are a little bit ahead of being the opposite of that. They were only a 500 team at home before this past 3-game winning streak in that homestand. So a little bit above that now, but it's definitely a team this year that, for whatever reason, has played better on the road than at home. John Tortorella talked a little bit about perhaps some of the reasoning for that, just a little less to worry about in general in life when you're on the road. Everything's pretty much taken care of for you when the Flyers are traveling. They just have to, show up at the correct places at the correct times. It's something that definitely I'd rather have it maybe that way than the other way around, because you can kind of solve things at home, especially as you get on through the season, and that seems to be what this team is doing. So, good road teams usually translate to better teams overall. So we'll see if that takes the case here over the rest of the season.
Yeah, hockey is a confusing game sometimes with, a team that's playing better on the road this season than at home overall. But one thing that's never been confusing about hockey is leadership. That has always been a necessity, and it's never been one man. It's always a group of leaders on a team. And tonight we're going to see 2 guys with a new letter on their jersey. I think Sean Couturier wore an A before, maybe many years ago.
Yeah, I think so. I think you're right.
When they were rotating it, perhaps?
Yeah, they were rotating guys home and road a little bit, yeah.
Yeah, but it's not going to be an A tonight. It's going to be a C. He is named the 20th captain in Flyers history. And Travis Konechny is going to put an A on his jersey tonight as well. But it's still going to take everybody else to pull the rope in the same direction and for multiple people to lead.
Yeah, I don't think a whole lot changes with this announcement yesterday. It's a little surprising that it happened when it did. We were under the impression that the Flyers would operate without a captain for the entire season. But the fact that they have I get the sense that this was largely John Tortorella's call. We haven't really been able to talk to a ton of people about it, but I get the sense that it was his call, that he felt that the team was at the point where they could go ahead and do this. The room was at the point that they could go ahead and do this. And so that's why it happened now, it seems, just from the brief comments he made about it today to the Toronto media corps, which is about 10 times larger here than we're used to in most road cities. So again, didn't get a chance to really hone in on some things. But again, I don't think a ton changes. I think Sean Couturier had already been a leader in the locker room. Honestly, don't know Coots all that well, so it's hard to say some of the off-ice stuff he might bring to it. But we've heard about him and Travis Konechny. TK will say if he gets a little bit too crazy out there that he'll just get that look from Coots, and so I think that at least attests a little bit of it to what to what he can do in this role. And but again, I don't think a whole lot changes. I think he was already doing that even without a C on his jersey, and TK was doing the same thing as well. So now it's just official.
Yeah, the funny thing is that look, the way TK explained it, that look is more like, no, I'm not mad at you, I'm disappointed. And that's it. And then you're like, oh man, I didn't want to. I'm fine with you being mad at me, but don't get disappointed in me.
There's a meme running around about that right now in some rugby league or something like that, where the referee says the same thing to the captains of the team. It's like that's the one thing that's the way that is effective leadership sometimes in these situations. Is that you don't want to disappoint the people that mean the most to you. So again, it's I can't imagine Sean Couturier being a fire and brimstone locker room guy. We hardly ever see him say anything, to be honest, and almost only does when he's forced to. So it's not going to be that kind of magnanimous captain. But I think that's where the A's that the Flyers chose are good complementary pieces because Scott Lawton goes out of his way to include absolutely everybody and everything, and then you have the comic relief, if you will, from Travis Konechny. So it does seem like a good group overall that complements each other well.
Yeah, and you got to have that's what leadership is in a locker room. Some guys fill certain roles. There's the guy to cut the tension. There's a guy to call people out. There's a guy that just shows up to work. You got to have all of those elements, and you got to be true to yourself. You cannot be something you're not. Let's take our first time out here on pregame. Flyers and Leafs tonight. Flyers will look to get their first taste of the Toronto Maple Leafs this season and continue a winning streak and run it to 5 games. They won 5, lost 5. See if they can win 5 again tonight against Toronto. Chris Therien will join us coming up next. You're listening to Flyers Game Day on the BetRivers.com Flyers Broadcast Network. It is Flyers Game Day. Flyers in Toronto to take on the Leafs. Joining us now is former Flyer defenseman Chris Therien. Bundy, going into Toronto is always special for players because it's, I guess, the hockey capital of the world, and so many guys are from that area. You have any great memories from playing in Toronto?
Just to be prepared to kill more penalties than they do.
That is not a myth.
You know what? I mean, you know what's great with Toronto, and because like Philadelphia has basketball and the Eagles and the fall, and the Phillies have had good. The thing with Toronto is that the day of the game in Toronto, it's all about the Leafs that night, right? Like, so people kind of suck it up and they really get into it. And so as a player, you yourself get into it also because, when you go back to the hotel room, you turn on Sportsnet or whatever is on your hotel TV, all you're seeing is really the previews for the Leafs game that night, even though there's 5 other Canadian teams or whatever it is. So that's really where they're at in terms of what Toronto, but it's a great game day, but you've got to be prepared and you got to shut off a lot of the noise because it can be really noisy in Toronto in terms of all the outside stuff going on. Just go in there, get your meal, get ready to play the game, and treat it like another good road game.
We're going to talk about the fact that the Flyers have a chance after winning 5 straight, then losing 5 straight, a chance to win 5 straight tonight. But let's talk about the captaincy because that came down yesterday, Bundy, is that the Flyers have named a new captain. I didn't think that was going to happen at all this season. First of all, were you shocked that it was named in season, but not shocked at who was named?
You know what? When I think about Sean Couturier, I mean, I've known Coots like you have. I've known him since he was a kid here. When he came in his first year, and I was doing radio and then went to TV, so I've developed a great relationship with Coots. He's a great person off the ice too, as well as a very, very courageous leader on and has played through that injury. But I think it's fine. I think the timing was right for it. I mean, this team's excelled this year, and there's obviously been some leaders now that have taken form, and it's not just John Tortorella back there as the kind of face of the team as it was last year. There's guys that have taken big steps forward, and so that had to be changed. If this is a team that deserves a worthy captain. It's probably had one of the greatest captains in the history of sports in Bob Clark. So when you pass a torch along like that, I think it's important to get it right. It doesn't mean they always get it right, but I think that right now where they are with, term left on Coots' deal, the way he stepped up for this team this year, as well as Konechny receiving the A also, I think there's a lot of really good things. And those two guys certainly well-deserved. I'm happy for Coots. That's absolutely the right call. To me, there's nobody else.
You think they name him? They don't name him initially because they got to make sure the guy's available, because you can't lead when you're not playing.
Yeah.
And coming off a 21-month kind of pause in your career with the multiple surgeries, is that part of the timing here, you think, Bundy? And they go, okay, we got to get a guy named.
I would absolutely think so, Jason. Yeah, I mean, I think what happened is when you look back at it, like, they didn't want to name a captain. One of the reasons Coots was out, I mean, the team was in a lot of disarray last year in terms of finding out who they were, who's who. They're like, even the coach said, we didn't even know if some guys this year were even NHLers. We had to find out. So what I really think that was, they waited last year to get, and then I think this was an audition for Couturier the whole time. I don't think it ever was. And I think that now that they realize that, he's been healthy, we're getting well up to the 3/4 mark of the season, or approaching it anyhow. This is a situation now where we think he's healthy and he's been a leader this year as he's been before without having the C. It was appropriate timing, and I think it's a really good time for it, actually, as you come down the home stretch, to have some of that leadership. Nobody just wants to look to an A, and certainly, I don't know. There's certain coaches you can go to. I'm not sure if Tort's the guy you're going to go into and lay your heart on the line to, so it's always good to have a captain in there that you can kind of roll things off of, whereas you're not going to, coaches or management. I think that's an important thing. And I think holding up the mantle in the meantime, I think Scotty Lawton did a great job too.
Yeah, I agree with you. Part of the captain's responsibilities is to be that conduit from the players to the coach, or the players to management, and to some extent players, as the representative to media. Sean Couturier is not the most outspoken guy, but Bundy, you can be a captain. You don't have to be Captain Rah-Rah to be that.
Yeah, he doesn't have to be, because he does lead on the ice, right? He's positionally sound. He's a well-trained two-way hockey player. He's been around. He knows Philadelphia. He knows the team. He knows the history of the team. A very, very logical choice. And you know what? I actually admire the fact that they did wait for this, because he's the one right player that was here, but you did have to see if he was going to be healthy. You can't have an injured captain that plays 40 games. It just doesn't work.
Yeah, impossible to lead when you don't go to battle against with your fellow teammates. Bundy, in Toronto tonight, I know they were dealing with some sickness.
Yeah,
Nylander missed practice, Marner and Tavares, but it looks like they're going to be a go tonight. But when you go through a sickness as a player, it's not as simple as just, I'm not sick anymore, I'm fine. There's a little bit of an energy issue that could be on the cards for them.
You know what? It almost feels, I haven't had one in a while, but it almost feels like a hangover, actually, when you're sick or you got the flu and then you got to go play a sporting event. You kind of feel like your blood gets going and you're almost in like a twilight zone. It's really weird. And I've been there a couple times in my career where it takes you a little while to get your feet under you, to kind of get the blood flowing again, because you've been laying around. When you're sick, you don't move. So really, sometimes what happens is the first time you actually hit the ice is in the game when you're ready to play. So again, what does that say to me? That means get a jump early. I mean, the Flyers have played well early in hockey games of late. And I always think, when you got a high-powered team, you got guys that have offense like Toronto, make them chase you. Make them have to play a game that they want to play, but it's not adept at winning because they end up taking too many chances. So that's, I think, where the Flyers' formula lies tonight in this game. But you got to have a good start, and you can't let Toronto pile on you and pile on early.
Bundy, they won 3 straight games at home. We've talked about quite a bit here on Flyers Game Day about them needing to be better at home.
Mm-hmm.
Good on the road all year. Is there any particular thing that you think they've done better, why they've had more success in those 3 games at home, and that they can take some of that even on the road tonight?
You know what? It's funny you say that because and I think one of the things they've done is they've actually played with pace, but they've also played very smart at the beginning of games. Like if there's nothing there, don't force it. Just get pucks in deep, and then keep the tempo and the puck going in a north direction. I mean, sometimes it's hard when you think you're just going to come out and be good at home. But I think the Flyers, if they treated it like, hey, we're going to play at home like we do on the road, then they've got that formula down. It's harder playing at home. It really is, because there's so much going on around the scenes. We've talked about that, your family, getting tickets, your meals and everything. When you're on the road, everything's there for you in the hotels. You get to the game, you're ready to go. So, but they've done. We talked about how important it is that they're better at home, and that 3-game win streak certainly helped.
And always the beginning of a game, I don't care if you're home, away, or on Neptune, starting it and scoring that first goal is obviously a big thing too. Bundy, one thing I've noticed over the past couple of games is a lot more of the out of the D zone lob into the neutral zone. What are your thoughts on that? Because, I mean, if you can't carry it out with possession, or you can't find that initial first pass to break out of the zone, a lot of teams employ that lob pass. I feel like I've seen it more lately, though, than ever before. And I guess it lets players kind of skate into pucks, but it also can be a turnover, and it's obviously not a puck deep.
I watched Vegas, when you say that, in 2017 when they got to the finals in their inaugural year. I never seen a team just flip pucks out of the zone.
Yeah.
When they did not have a play. Remember, that's an expansion team, first year expansion team at the time. And all they did was get pucks out in the neutral zone, any kind of trouble at all. And they really won a long way with that kind of formula set for themselves. But, again, you want to make plays, but if there's a guy streaking and you see him and there's no body near him, there's nothing wrong with sending a high pass. If you've got enough skill to do that, let a guy catch it with his glove and keep the play going.
Obviously, Ristolainen going to be out for a little bit of a period of time. And, the trickle-down effect of that is maybe they go 12-6. We know you like that instead of the 11-7.
I do.
But this is one of those spots in the season where, hey, sometimes guys are not available. Somebody's got to step up and, fill those shoes. Mark Stahl, maybe that guy. Zamula didn't see a lot of ice time in his last action. I think just over 6 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
But you can't sit around waiting for guys. These guys got to step up because it's too tight not to.
There's no doubt, and again, they're going to be asked to do that. They're going to they'll be put in situations where they're going to have to defend harder, and and again, it's not like you're taking a guy who's got 50 or 60 points out and is an amazing power play guy too. But those are compete minutes that Ristolainen plays for this team, so they've got to gobble it up. And again, for me, if you're asked to play those type of minutes, just be hard to play against the corners, know your responsibilities down below the hash marks, and get the puck out as efficiently as possible.
Last thing, Bundy, when you're dealing with a team like Toronto, they're going to be without Morgan Riley tonight too. He's got the 5-game suspension.
That's all. 5 games.
Yeah. That's you look at them; they're not great defensively, but we know what they have up front. We kind of alluded to it before. When you look at Tavares, you look at Marner, Nylander, and then Matthews, who's a different kind of animal, I think, than all of those guys. How do you defend them? How do you defend a player like Matthews, who has got such a lethal shot, changes the angle of the shot, and can score from anywhere? What do you want to do defensively against those guys?
Well, always, anytime. I mean, I've said for years, and I've played against them and did it. The best thing you can do with star players is when they have the puck, because you're not just going to get the puck when they come across the blue line to make plays, right? So you have to keep them to the outside as best you can. You're not going to be able to limit, like you can maybe limit the chance shots that a guy like Matthews takes, or a Marner or Nylander. But the problem is that when they get the puck into the middle of the ice, you're dead. You're finished. And that's where they're so creative. So I always say, if you can't keep the puck there and he's going to shoot it, that's fine. But make sure the body stays to the perimeter of the ice. You cannot let those guys get in between the circles, and that's where they want. I mean, that's where the danger comes from, those quick plays. And I mean, not just in between the hash marks. I mean, cross box passes. You got to take everything away, because when they go left to right, east to west, they're lethal in the offensive zone, and they do shoot from anywhere. And Matthews can snipe.
Yeah,
it's like Yager. I always said, like, what did you do with Yager? Just leave him to the outside. Yeah. If they're going to score from out there, then they're going to score from out there, and that'll be on your goalie. But when the time comes to battle and you're able to pinch a player off in the corner, you got to go to work with them, and you got to make sure that you're on the right side of the puck, especially body-wise.
I feel like you have to always be prepared to defend them too. You know who it is, know what they like to do, where they like to go, so you can maximize killing their time. Because if you watch them at all, you're dead. That's such a disadvantage.
Yeah, puck watching will kill you against like really skilled players.
Yeah,
and that's what they'll avoid tonight if they can.
Well, it'll be an interesting matchup between the Flyers and the Leafs tonight. We'll be back with more as we get ready for Flyers Leafs. Back after this on Flyers Game Day on the BetRivers.com Flyers Broadcast Network. Coming up, it's the Philadelphia Flyers and the Toronto Maple Leafs on the road tonight. Flyers will be back on the road coming up Saturday. Going to go from Toronto tonight to New York to get ready for the Stadium Series, which, of course, is coming up on Saturday. Proud to announce, Smitty, that you and I have a hour-long pregame show on the Flyers Broadcast Network coming up on Saturday. Exclusive coverage, as they call it.
Yeah, I guess if we're going to be cold, we might as well be cold for as long as possible.
I tested out the long johns today.
Did you? Yeah, I couldn't find mine before we left. So I don't know. We're going to be in Manhattan, so I'm sure I can dig something up. But yeah, we're looking forward to it. It's always fun to do these these spectacles. It changes things up a little bit. And, certainly going to be all eyes on Philly and the Devils type thing. I mean, that just tends to draw in some viewers that are not really maybe typically checking things out. It's on ABC, so it's going to be a good overall spectacle. It's going to be an important game as well, obviously, with the Flyers trying to put as much distance as they can between themselves and the rest of the Metropolitan Division, because right now that's their best lock into a playoff spot, is to stay ahead of the rest of the Metro. So, it's going to be a 4-point game in that regard, and hopefully they'll have a winning streak to extend.
Yeah, we'll see if they can get their fifth straight win tonight. Flyers come in 54 games played, 29-19-6, 64 points. One behind Carolina, who's got 2 games in hand on the Flyers. But they are crucially 6 points up on New Jersey. New Jersey's got 2 games in hand, and obviously that one on Saturday will be a big one. The Leafs come into this game tonight in the 4th spot in the Atlantic Division, 51 games, 27-16-8, 62 points, 13-10-2 at home, 6-4 in their last 10. They did win their last one without Morgan Riley. But he will not be in the lineup once again tonight. I think it's maybe tomorrow of the 5-game suspension. And a good start in this game, Bri, it's going to be huge to get on top of the Leafs right away. They can own this one too. Talk about that with Dundee as well. But a good start on the road is something that wouldn't be abnormal for this Flyers team.
Yeah, and really, you're looking for a little bit of jump with this because half the team's got a ton of people here. Obviously, we know about Morgan Frost and his connection to this organization through his father, who was the public address announcer, the Lou Nolan of this building for years. But Scott Lawton also, grew up coming to this building to watch NHL games. Travis Konecny, Owen Tippett, Jamie Drysdale, lots of guys from this general area call this place their childhood home, and a lot of them have a lot of folks coming tonight to check things out. So might see a little bit of a vocal Flyers crowd here if they're able to get one early. It's always a great atmosphere in this town. We always usually associate it with hockey night in Canada and a Saturday night game, even though it's a Thursday night game here. It's still special for a lot of these guys.
Yeah, for the Philadelphia fans, it's like the Eagles on steroids, the Leafs in Toronto.
Yeah,
it's just insane the way they are just every single day, and obviously there's a lot of scar tissue and pain there for the Leafs because they haven't won a cup since expansion. So it's been a long time there. So a lot of scar tissue. And Morgan Frost is a guy, Bri, that right now I think looking at his game is probably playing his best hockey of the season. You just see his confidence in his decision making out there, trying to make a difference. And what Tort said the other day I thought was interesting. He said he's playing like he wants to be a difference maker, and that's a big step of development for young players.
Yeah, Timmy and Fridge are going to get into this pretty deep, I think, tonight. But he and I were talking about it in the Flyers game day preview that we do on the Flyers YouTube channels and social channels. How much of a difference it is for Morgan Frost from last time the Flyers were in this building when he was a healthy scratch to now. It's just been a fantastic, just kind of rocketing up the ladder, I guess, over the last couple of months, really, for him. And he's not the only one. We've seen this from a couple of Flyers. Cam York's been another guy that has rocketed up. Just the development of some of these young players has really started to take off. So, it's a promising thing, and it's why the Flyers are where they're at, because as Danny Briere said in the offseason, the players are going to dictate the rebuild. Well, it's got things maybe ahead of schedule just a little bit.
Yeah, and you looked at last year the way Frost finished the season and was the Flyers' leading scorer, I think, over their final 50 or so games. And a lot of the couching of that statement was, well, those games didn't mean much. They were kind of playing out the string, which is true. But that's not the case right now. This is far different.
And this is a microcosm of that concept tonight. To see what the Flyers in their new defensive self, really, that they learned last year, and their transition game, what can it do against a high-powered team like this one here tonight? Flyers have not played Toronto yet. 2 more games coming up next month in Philadelphia in quick succession. So when you look at that measuring stick term, whatever have you, it's going to be, I think, very, very interesting to see how the Flyers handle a team like this tonight.
Yeah, as somebody pointed out in the chat on the stream, the Flyers haven't handled, the superstar players real well in those last 3. That was Colorado, that was Boston, and that was Tampa. It was Kucherov, McKinnon, and Pasternak. They're going to deal with some high-powered superstars. Like Austin Matthews has 42 goals in 50 games. So detailed defensive effort is going to be needed here tonight.
And again, I'm really looking forward to comparing this to that time frame.
Yeah.
It seems, the more we look back on it, the more it's like the Flyers were not in a good spot at that time. It was a bad spot in the schedule. John Tortorella has told the media today that, back in those games, that's when Ole Lycksell came up, and there was no offense to Ole Lycksell, but he looked like he was the fastest guy on the ice in some of those games. And so the break came at a great time. They're re-energized, and really looking forward to seeing how this group handles it.
Zach says on our stream that Frost hasn't been that good. His power play numbers are bad, and he's been very predictable. He's the most unpredictable player they had in Owen Tippett, so I totally disagree with Zach in that regard. But let's get it to Flyers Leafs. Stay tuned. Tim Saunders, Todd Fedoruk, they're standing by. Yeah, they've got the countdown to face-off between the Flyers and the Leafs coming up. You've been listening to Flyers Game Day on the BetRivers.com Flyers Broadcast Network.